GM, and looks like we are live. Hey, everybody. I am Crypto Dragoness or Reva from the HyperverseDAO team, and with me today is Spider Tian. Uh, you're really familiar with him, I know, because you guys have been watching him on Twitter. I've been reading all the comments, and it's lovely to have everyone here today. And I really want to see that all of you guys have joined us. So quickly put in a thumbs up, say hello. And I might even like pull up some of your comments up here on the screen right now. By the way, hi GM Noshat, hi Alien Boys, and by the way, this is being broadcasted in two places. You can watch this on LinkedIn or you can watch this on YouTube. So if you're on LinkedIn, just say you're watching it from LinkedIn, I'm watching it from YouTube, and let's just have fun. Without further ado, ta-da! Let's go, Spider. How you doing?
Great, fantastic. Yeah, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing really, really well. And I just wanted everyone here to, get acquainted with you before we go through the wonderful workshop that you have prepared for us today. And I'm pretty excited by it, only because, I work in Web3, but I am in no form like a designer. I do come from an advertising background. I used to be a creative director at a Web2 agency for 10 years, 15 years. But yeah, I'm very interested to know about product design and designing for Web3. How different is it from, from whatever that we have been creating for Web2? And interesting enough, a lot of the people who had signed up for today's workshop, right? Actually, exactly 50% of the people are currently working in Web3, and the other 50% are not working in Web3, don't know much about Web3, but they are interested to learn. So, yeah. Tell us more about yourself. How long have you been doing this, and what are we going to learn today?
Sure. Thank you for asking. So I want to begin first by saying I'm currently in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. And I've been in Web3 since 2015. My journey has been a very crazy, awesome journey full of ups and downs, but overall it's been an exponential journey into this space. So 2015, I went to this hackathon in Waterloo and I met Vitalik Buterin. And yeah, so he gave a talk about Ethereum, and that was when I first got introduced to this whole world. And then really, there's a lot to say, but how did I really get into it? So, okay, the beginning part, another big event that happened was, so that year he got accepted to, Vitalik got like this initial round of funding. I don't know if you know this, but it was like 100,000 USD to build out Ethereum. And it was by this guy called Peter Thiel, one of the co-founders of PayPal. And so Peter Thiel, he's the founder of, his own nonprofit called the Thiel Foundation. Anyway, so the Thiel Foundation has that fellowship program where they give out $100,000 to top 20 under 20 youths to build out their businesses, of which, by the way, fun fact, Figma also was funded by Peter Thiel. Anyway,
right, okay.
But they also run this conference series. Well, they did it before, but they don't do it anymore. And it was called the Thiel Summit. And so I applied to the Thiel Summit and I got accepted to that. And one of the keynotes was provided by Balaji Srinivasan. And I don't know if you've heard of him, but he's one of the thought leaders in the Web3 space. Like you can find him on Twitter, and like he's got a huge following. And so anyway, he gave the keynote about blockchain, and the way he described it was just it would be this technology that would enable the next evolutionary step of the internet. So he didn't actually use the word Web3 back then, but he basically said Web3 without saying Web3. And so me being someone that always cared about future-proofing myself, future-proofing my career, I'm like, it was a no-brainer for me. I'm like, well, I would rather work on the next step of the internet than the current step. Like, that's the future. I'd rather be in the future than in the now, right? And so when I came back in 2015 to Toronto from that conference, which was in Las Vegas at the time, I just really wanted to get involved. But as a designer, there wasn't many opportunities, which is why my journey was exponential. Because like in those early days, I didn't get to do much product design, but eventually I was able to get to where I am today, where I am doing product design in the Web3 world. So that's that's I mean, there's a lot to say. I've worked for a lot of organizations, and you can find some of them on my Twitter profile. It shows some of the organizations I've worked for, past and present, and on my LinkedIn as well. You can add me there. I think I'm tagged in the LinkedIn live post. If not, I can share my LinkedIn profile.
Yeah, yes, you are, but you are easy to find because you're with the HyperverseDAO community ambassador team now. So we will make sure that we promote the heck out of you. And, I know you do a lot of things with a lot of organizations, lots of DAOs, and we are very, very proud to have you as part of the HyperverseDAO team.
Thank you.
How has it been working so far? Your videos have been amazing. You've done like a bunch of videos, and I'm going to post them in the upcoming weeks, and they're all about product design. I think that's what you're focusing on right now.
Yes.
I'm pretty aware that we have chit-chatted for like 5 minutes, and you got so much of content prepared for us. So I'm going to let you take this away.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, much love to you. Okay, so before I move on to like the stuff that I have planned for all of you, I just want to begin with a few things. So number one is, I don't know if you caught the joke here, but this hashtag of WW3 is trending on Twitter. But let's maybe turn it around and let it be focused on WinWeb3 instead of, World War III. And then number two, I wanted to quickly say is, I don't know if you notice I'm wearing this orange shirt. It's actually pretty important because, so in Canada, we have this day that was commemorated by the government recently. It's called the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. It was yesterday. And as part of that, we have to, there's this, I don't know how to say it, but it was also known as Orange T-shirt Day or Orange Shirt Day. It's basically to commemorate the lives that were lost, especially the children, the Aboriginal children that were unjustly taken away due to Canada's residential school system. Canada's used to be a colony, right? And like there was a lot of Aboriginals, and you can look this up. I'm not going to go into all the details, even though it's technically something that is worth the attention. So please just Google it, National Day of Truth and Reconciliation in Canada. But yeah, that's why I'm wearing the shirt. And then I just wanted to also say, sorry, I was looking at my notes, that this entire workshop might be cut into two parts because there's a lot to go through. And also, when I was creating the content for this workshop, I had a hard time working on it because there was just a lot to put down, but also a lot more that I could have put down or prepared, because this kind of subject matter is almost I believe it's actually a graduate level, like a master's level or PhD level subject matter actually, or it could be. So there's a lot of depth that we can go into, but obviously there's not enough time. So I'm not going to be able to do that. But I think we'll still be able to get something juicy out of it, or that there is still juicy content. And then if someone is a master's student here or a PhD student, feel free to turn this into a thesis statement or your thesis. Okay, and without further ado, sorry, just going to quickly look at my notes again to see if there's anything else I needed to talk about. No, I think that's it. All right. So the first exercise, so there's going to be three things that are three exercises / activities that I want to go through with this workshop. However, like I said, it might be turned into a two-parter. So that third one is the main one. That one we might only be able to get into half of it. But anyway, so we're going to start with Web3 organizational principles. And the reason why is because, in that first video that I created for, I think in that first video, I talked about how an art of work is a work, or work of art is an art of work, right? So product design is as much about what you see as well as what you don't see, which is the thing that happens behind the scenes, right? And so we need to start there. We need to start behind the scenes before we can talk about what's in front of the stage, right? So when it comes to organizational principles or Web3 organizational principles, what I'm talking about here is what are some of the foundational values that we care about and should care about when building a Web3 organization. And so what I mean when I say Web3 organization is basically a DAO, or for those who are not in Web3, a decentralized autonomous organization. And so without further ado, I've personally come up with 6 of these principles, but and then so I'll share my 6, or actually, no. We're gonna start with brainstorming without me showing you the 6 that I came up with. And then we're gonna try to see if, and it's not about being right or wrong. It's just about like, if there's any new ones that I did not think of, I would love to add them to the principles that I already came up with. So yeah, please feel free to put it in, put in the chat, what kind of principles you think we should live by when creating or growing a DAO. Yeah, so I'm gonna time us for like maybe 5 minutes, and then yeah. In the meanwhile, I guess I wonder if I should be silent, if I should tell a joke, or if I should sing. Oh, okay. Well, it looks like people aren't necessarily sharing their ideas here, which I guess is also fine. So I'm just gonna, reveal the 6 that I came up with. All right. So first principle that I came up with is remoteness. Now, okay, this is in no order, no particular order. Yeah. So first one is remoteness, and then second one is diversity. Third one is bottom-up hierarchy. Fourth one is transparency / visibility. Fifth one is collective ownership. And last one is open source. So yeah, these 6 principles are things that I came up with when I think about a DAO. Now, you might have noticed that I did not write decentralization or autonomy, which are the 2 words of a DAO, right? The 2 key words. And I think I intentionally did not write those 2 words because, well, number one, it's implied, I think, like when you, that's what the DAO stands for, right? But the other one is like, I guess I'm also trying to think about, well, what makes it decentralized? Is it the remoteness that makes it decentralized, or the diversity that makes it decentralized, or right? And then when it comes to autonomy, is it the fact that it's open source? Does that give it autonomy? Or even collective ownership? Like when you hear collective, you might not think individual, but like if everyone owns something together, that means it's not owned by a centralized entity, right? So actually this could imply decentralized, right? So I'm just trying to focus on like what gives rise to decentralization and autonomous or autonomy. What can enable that to happen? Because yeah, it's easy to just write, oh yeah, of course, the principle of a DAO is to be decentralized and to be autonomous. I mean, that would be too easy. So okay, now that but I'm curious, has anyone come up with any other, or while after I've shared these, anyone? Oh, okay, I see something here. Core team governance model. Okay. So but like that's not necessarily a principle. If we could turn that into a principle, what would you say? Keisha? Maybe something about governance, something about core team. I mean, okay, well, I've heard of this concept of, has anyone heard of holocracy? So it's kind of like a decentralized governance model that exists out there. It was pioneered by Tony Hsieh, who was the founder of Zappos. Yeah, and there were also like a lot of discussions though, or debates and controversy around it. I don't remember all the details, but I'm just gonna leave that there. Maybe holocracy, though I don't think that's a principle still. But I actually find it ironic that not a lot of people in the DAO world have even talked about holocracies. Like it's really I found it really weird that hasn't really been discussed, or maybe it has. I haven't seen it trending at all ever. Anyway, and what goes into exactly. That's the question we're trying to answer here, is what goes into building a DAO. So okay, now that we have these, what I want to do is do a bit of voting of like need versus want for these principles. So do we need remoteness versus really need it? And then do we want remoteness, or do we really want it? I've never done this kind of like asynchronous voting before where, it's done in a chat, but I'm going to try. So let's just go through it one by one. So when it comes to remoteness, do we just put it in the chat? Like, do we really need it, or do we just need it? And just write like either of those words. Because if you're not, I'm just going to decide myself what I think should be. But like, Web3 should not be about authoritativeness here. I don't want to be an authoritarian ruler, decider. Okay, all right, we got one person who voted need as a concept. Good. I mean, all right, come on, keep it going. All right, just put in what you think. Do we need remoteness, or do we really need remoteness for Web3? And actually, okay, to keep things moving at a faster pace, please write also if you think you want it or really want it. So just write like need, and then maybe comma, want, or really want. Okay, we got 3 votes for need. And we've got 1. Okay, cool. Nice. Yeah, keep it going. We got 5 more principles after this, so And yeah, for the next principles when we vote, or just in general, like if we could keep it in like a comma format. So like the first one is need versus really need, comma, want versus really want. All right. Okay. Maybe I'll give it like another, I don't know, 30 seconds before we move on to the next principle. But thanks for voting, everyone, so far. Okay, and I just want to like clarify again, like it's not a versus situation of need and want. It's more versus of like need versus the really, and then want versus really want. Like as you can see, there's going to be a matrix here, or there is a matrix that I've created here. But okay, it looks like voting is done. So people are not putting in any more. So I'm going to count these up. We got 4 needs. And then we've got 1 really need. Oh, geez. Sorry, I'm just going to... Oh, gosh. Sorry about this. I'll be faster for the next ones. I'll just put it here. And then 3 or 4 really wants. All right. Wow. A lot of people really want and need this. All right. And then that should actually not, I don't know why that became a section. Okay. All right. Let's move on to diversity. All right. Yeah. So remember the format is just like, do we want a really need or need versus, and then comma, want versus really want. What? This is so weird. Okay. There we go. All right. Okay, yeah. Next up is diversity. Feel free to vote again if you already voted for remoteness. We're doing the same thing. Okay, nice. One vote for need and really want. And yeah, good. Yeah, that's the format. So just want to remind again, it's like the need, comma, want format, or really need, comma, really want format. Yeah. So I see most people are keeping to that format, which is great. Thank you. But 2 of you are not. Okay. Just add 1, 2, 3. Actually, no, I'll wait until we're done. Okay. Nice, nice, sweet. Okay. Okay. All right. I'm gonna count these up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. No, wait. I double counted. Oh, that's the thing that Web3 solves, right? No double spend. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, 7. Okay. 7 really wants. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. Oh my gosh. Come on. All right. And how many of the, okay, tell me what you want, what you really, really want. Nice. Yeah. Thanks, Galen. Okay. Now needs. We got 1, 2, 3. 3 really needs. And what are the rest here? And then 1, 2, 3. 3 needs. Okay. Cool. All right, next one. Bottom-up hierarchy. Oh, and I guess I need to also stress, this is kind of idealistic thinking as well. Like, I think most DAOs still operate from a bottom-up, top-down hierarchy, which I think, I mean, it makes sense because it's how we operate as a human race. We do kind of need that kind of structure, but like, maybe it is possible to do bottom up. And I mean, I think some do operate bottom up. So yeah. Well, I realized though, I don't have a don't want. Shoot, this is biased towards assuming that we all want and need these. Whoops, I'm so sorry about that. I did not mean for it to be that way. Actually, if anything, okay, well, we could finish voting for. Oh no, nobody has voted for bottom up. Oh, okay, yeah, this is taking quite a bit of time. So, oh boy, you know what? I know what to do. I know exactly what to do. Okay, yeah, because this is taking quite a long time. Is there any of these where you think doesn't fit? Let's just leave it at that. Yeah, any of these where you don't think it fits at all as a principle and you want to get rid of it, or you want to modify? Anything you want to modify or get rid of? Let's just discuss that. And because if, I mean, yeah, no objections. You cool with all of these principles? I'll just zoom in a bit more. Okay, all right. We at least have one person who objects to something, which is good. Yeah, I mean, like even as I was speaking about it myself, like I'll add a little note here. What should I say though? Okay, cool, Keisha, you're all good. That's great. Thank you. But Galen has a bit of a problem with the bottom up. Maybe I'll just write. I mean, is their main concern maybe like hard to do? Maybe. Or unrealistic, perhaps. Any other comments about this? No? Actually, I'll add one more of my own is it's not about top versus bottom, more about inside versus outside. But I mean, that might just be a different way of saying the same thing. Okay, well, actually, if anything, I'm gonna just put these, or I'll remove that and just add an additional note in here about holocracies. Yeah. Okie dokie. We could move on, or we should probably move on. Yeah, I'm gonna move on. Okay. So exercise number 2, which is not really so much as an exercise, more so a just me sharing and presenting my thoughts on Web 2 versus Web 3. And then like we can have some discussion around it. And I'm hoping also, if any of you find I'm sorry, if any of you find anything interesting here, feel free to tweet it. There's a lot of one-liners and hopefully good one-liners. I mean, I personally think I create a lot of good one-liners, but all right. So I'm going to begin by saying something controversial. It's going to be about the concept of monopolies and how I believe that monopolies are inevitable. So in our current present world, not only is the concept of a monopoly inevitable, for example, the recent acquisition of Figma by Adobe. I know you might think, or people might just think that's just another acquisition, but like these acquisitions happen all the time, right? And as they happen every time, it does create waves, and it just makes you realize that it's inevitable. These companies are all either going to get acquired, or they'll become as big as the companies that do the acquiring. And sorry, it's not even just like historically you see this all the time. It's more so it's an inevitable fact, because so Andreessen Horowitz coined this phrase: "Software is eating the world." Right? That was the monopolization of the world via software, via Web 2. Right? When during the mid 2010s, you saw a lot of that happening. And then during the crypto summer of 2017, a new phrase came up, or an evolution of that software is eating the world came about, and it was tokens are eating the world. Oh, bad grammar. Sorry about that. Or sorry, eating software, and by transitive property, the world. And so that makes you realize that, yeah, like this, the way that our economy has grown over the last Oh, I'm going back to history. I got to move on. So, okay, not only do I think monopolies are inevitable, but that it should be desirable as well. So that's the controversial statement that I'm making. Now, I personally consider myself or identify as a leftist, and yet I'm saying something that is very antithetical to the leftist ideology. You might be wondering why. Well, I'll tell you why. So it's not that I think we should want more of these big tech companies to exist in this world in the way that they currently exist. So I think it's, oh, actually, before I get there, so I got to start with this. I think it is sensible in terms of economy, psychology / sociology, and even ecology. I think it's all sensible that we should want, and that it's inevitable that monopolies are going to happen. And I say this because, so economically, of course, they're inevitable. We know this. We've seen this. And there's a book, 0 to 1, written by Peter Thiel. And it basically goes into why you should build monopolies, or you should create or get gobbled up by a monopoly, essentially. So from a financial standpoint, it makes sense. We already know this. We don't need to, or at least we should know this. I think it does make sense. When the means of production are controlled by, well, actually, okay, I'm going to move on to the next one. But I think from a psychological, sociological, and ecological standpoint, it is something that is also sensible, because at the end of the day, actually, I'm just going to pause over here. It all boils down to one simple concept, and it's efficiency. We should want more efficient products and services in this world to exist. Efficiency is beneficial for everyone, for even the planet. That's why I say ecologically. Because what is efficiency or optimization? It's all about, well, okay, efficiency is all about optimizing for things, right? And what is optimization all about? Minimizing inputs, maximizing outputs, minimizing what you put into the system to maximize what you get out of the system. And one of those inputs could be, well, minimize the amount of waste we generate, minimize the amount of raw materials we use. That's good for the environment, right? And then maximize what we get out of what is already in the system, maybe, because we've minimized the amount of things that we take from Mother Nature. So I think efficiency and optimization is actually good and righteous. But so as I wrote here, it is in a way because of efficiency, but not in the right way, like right now. Like, we're not doing it right, but it could or should be. Like, in other words, we're not creating monopolies as collectively as a human race in the right way. We're not going about it the right way. It's being done in a very just wrong way. And I'll explain why it's being done wrongfully shortly. So what is it? I think I'm just gonna sum this up by saying I think we should want singular rings of power to rule them all. But these rings of power should not be worn by the few, because with great power comes great responsibility. Yet sadly, absolute power corrupts absolutely. So I've just basically strewn together like a few different quotes and memes together. But I think having, again, monopolies are good because you have efficiency, a more efficient system. But if it's owned by the few, then, well, that's not good. It's not good. And we've seen that already occur in many ways, from how our environment is being damaged because of these monopolies owned by a few. They only care about owning super yachts. These people who are up top in society, they don't really care about the environment. That's why they greenwash. That's why they virtue signal. It's not working. The way that we're creating monopolies is not the right way. Even though I think we should want there to be monopolies, but it's just not going about it correctly. And so this is where I go into saying, clarifying the differences that I think are between Web 2 and Web 3. So who here has played Cyberpunk 2077 or watched Cyberpunk Edge Runners on Netflix? Or who here hasn't, or whatever? Just sound off in the comment section if you know what I'm talking about when I mentioned Cyberpunk 2077. Anybody? Oh, okay. We've got a blockchain Chad says I. You, as in you played it? Or you've watched the show? What does I mean? Okay, Galen says yes. Yes to what? The game and the show, or the game or the? All right, all right. So you know what Cyberpunk 2077 is, at least. Okay, Keisha, you do what? Like you play the game, watch the show, or both? um, okay, no worries. Cool, great. So let me share why I wrote Web2 leads to Cyberpunk 2077. So I personally have not played Cyberpunk 2077, but I do own the game. I haven't played it yet. But I've watched Edge Runners, and I've looked into the synopsis. So I understand the universe of Cyberpunk 2077. So for those who don't know, and just for everyone here, Cyberpunk 2077, the setup is it imagines a future whereby, actually, before I tell you what that, I'm just gonna who here knows what the concept of the military-industrial complex is? Or who doesn't? I'm going to say it again. Military-industrial complex. Heard of that concept before? Yes, no? Okay, well, not getting any replies here. So I'm just going to go into it. So military-industrial complex, if you Google it, is a concept. It's not a new thing. President Eisenhower in America coined, or was one of the problem something solution. What? Okay. Not really relevant here, but anyway. So military-industrial complex is this concept that was coined back then. It's not a new thing. It's basically the collusion of government/military with industry / basically our economic system. Mighty industries, especially. That's why it uses the word industrial. So in the Western world, especially in America, that exists. Like big companies, big tech, big oil, big this, big that, has a network of complex relationships with the government and the military vis-a-vis the lobbying system and amongst other things. So this military-industrial complex does exist. It's already here. We live in a world where that exists. Cyberpunk 2077 basically says that you think I'm way off there? Well, I suggest you look into it. But I can at least say that the Cyberpunk 2077 universe imagines if that military-industrial complex has taken over the world, because that's exactly what it is in that universe, right? You got these mega corporations that are the size of countries, and they have their own militaries, and that essentially rule the world. So that's the Cyberpunk 2077 universe, and I don't think that is something that is unbelievable. Like I do believe that is something that we could be trending towards if we continue to let the Web2 world behave the way that they have always behaved, which is to continue to acquire and grow as big as they can for the sake of growth. And once they get big enough, they're going to have relationships with the government. I mean, you're telling me that at the very least, you would be in denial if you don't agree that big tech does not have any sort of relationship with the government. They do, right? I mean, anyway, so I'm just going to move on. And I think the reason why I wrote this, I believe this, is because software right now is being treated as a capital good. So capital good is any sort of good or means of production that allows someone to make money off of it. It's privatized, and yeah. So I think it's pretty obvious. We've seen this. Just software owned by these big tech companies, owned by the select few, is using it as is being treated as a capital good, and therefore it benefits the few at the expense of the masses, because Web2 has a monopoly of your attention. As a result, because it's a monopoly of your attention vis-a-vis social and ad networks, humanity feeding their data into AI. It's centralized, it's individualistic, it's feudalistic, because we rent the digital real estate from these big tech companies, and it's plutocratic. So people in the West love to think that it's a democracy or that it's meritocratic, but it's not actually. I mean, there's a lot of people are waking up to the fact that it's not a meritocracy. There's a lot of articles and videos online talking about how, for example, the tech industry is not as meritocratic as they like to, as an example, like to preach. In fact, it's people who own the wealth and the means of production are the ones who have more say, right? Anyway, and so I'm going to go back to earlier, that like controversial statement about like monopolies being something we should want, but I already explained why I believe that we should want it, but we're not doing it the right way. But I want to also bring on the flip side. People argue against monopolies because they say competition drives innovation, right? That's the common argument against that concept of a monopoly. But I'm gonna present the counter for that, for what actually, if we were to go about it the right way, we could still have innovation, but we don't need competition to be the thing that drives innovation. Anyway, and then just to wrap this entire section up about Web 2, in the Web 2 world, we have the saying of "Don't be evil," coined by Google, and I already said this is like these companies they want to come across as not evil when in actuality they are doing a lot of evil things. Like we've seen this with documentaries like The Social Dilemma, talking about Facebook and how they've created this, a lot of dark UX. Sorry, so I wrote here, dark UX exists in the Web 2 world a lot. It's all that because they're driven by money, the single bottom line. It's a profit-driven industry, right, or world. So dark user experience patterns are any sort of UX patterns that is that benefits the business and not the individual. So when it comes to like The Social Dilemma, with Facebook as an example, and all of its subsidiaries like Instagram and all that, they were all about capturing your attention and making sure you stay engaged, right? That you get hooked. That's what it was all about. And I mean, we still unfortunately see that in today's day and age with TikTok and every other social media company taking that product and turning it into a feature and embedding it into their apps, right? Like you got Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts, or whatever they call it, Snips, or whatever YouTube calls it. Facebook has their own TikTok feature. LinkedIn tried out that at one point. I don't know if you remember, but LinkedIn tried doing a TikTok feature. I think to no avail because they stopped, or maybe they're still doing it with a select few. Yeah, like anyway, and then I wrote Eat the Rich here. I don't know if you've watched the Netflix documentary Eat the Rich. It was about the whole GameStop craze, when that stock, everyone was buying it, the Wall Street bets, that whole situation. So in that whole fiasco, Robinhood was being called out for its dark user experience of making it super easy, but like absurdly easy, almost addicting to invest. And then there was this whole debate about whether or not Robinhood could even be considered a gambling app, and how that kind of goes against certain policies or whatever, right? So like Web 2 benefits from creating dark UX. It's basically the point that I'm trying to drive home here. And so what differs between Web 2 and Web 3 design? Well, I would argue, what's the opposite of dark UX? It's a bit of a spoiler, but I think you figured it out. So I'm just going to go up here. I think the main difference between Web 2 and Web 3 is, I think instead of a cyberpunk future, we can have a solarpunk future. Solarpunk is essentially humanity living in harmony with nature. And like I already have experienced this a little bit when I was at ETH Barcelona earlier this year. Their whole theme was solarpunk. And this is why we have the world of regenerative finance, or refi, for example, right? And impact DAOs and public goods. And speaking of public goods, I think we need to start treating software as a public good. And with Web3, that's possible. So instead of a capital good being something that's privatized, public good is owned by the public. Now, here's another, I think, misconception with like this dichotomy. Sorry, here's another like alternate viewpoint that I want to present. And that's, when people automatically think, okay, if you're against capital goods, then you must be, or if you're against capitalism, then you must be for communism, and therefore you must be supportive of the government owning everything. No, the opposite of privatization is not the government owning everything. At least with Web3, you could have a world where maybe it's not the government that owns everything, it's actually the people, of the people, by the people, from the people. Yeah, because, and we've already seen some of that happen. The democratization of finance is already happening with Web3. It's not being owned by a select few, and it's not being owned by the government, right? I mean, that's the whole thesis of Bitcoin. That was the original thesis, is a currency for everyone, for all of humanity, not owned by a centralized party, not owned by the World Economic Forum, not owned by the World Bank, not owned by the International Monetary Fund, but owned by everyone, right? So I think the original vision of Web3 is that it could be public, but not necessarily public vis-a-vis the government. So I'm gonna move on. I think for Web3, we should, again, going back to what I said earlier, we should want monopolies, but the right kind. And so Web2 monopolies was a monopoly of your attention. I think Web3 monopoly is a monopoly of our attention. And that can be achieved through creating a social network that is fact-based as opposed to ad-based, one where AI is serving humanity as opposed to humanity being slaves to it. And then one that is decentralized, collectivistic, truly meritocratic. And I would argue the way that this meritocratic system could be run is one that needs to be technocratic as opposed to plutocratic. Plutocratic meaning, again, of, by, from, and for the rich / ultra wealthy. Technocratic being of, by, from, and for people who understand the technology, engineers. And you might argue, Chen, are you saying you want Jeff Bezos to rule the world? No, because I don't think he is a technocrat. I think people like Bezos or Zuckerberg or whatever, these are not technocrats, these are plutocrats, but they're being inaccurately labeled as technocrats in the mainstream media, but they're not actually technocrats. I mean, and if you're an engineer, you should know, like once you get to a high enough managerial position, you code less, right? You're not coding as much, you're managing. So I would argue Zuckerberg is no longer an engineer, he's a manager. He probably doesn't even manage, he has managers under him, right? All he does is he checks his balances. He checks his, he's not a technocrat. He's a plutocrat. He has a bunch of money. He's a walking, talking money bag. So when I argue for technocracies here, I'm arguing for actually the people who understand the technology, who are the engineers who are on the ground, like building the technology, or who at least can speak that language. And I think with Web3, we actually do already have some of that. Like when you look at who creates the EIPs in the DAO proposals of major blockchain networks like Ethereum, I guess people who actually understand how Ethereum works, how it functions. It's not like some person full of money who's leading the direction of Ethereum, right? So Ethereum is already technocratic. I would argue that the governance of Ethereum as a network is already technocratic. And I think we should want a society where, and okay, I just want to finish this. Remember when they had the hearings in the Senate with all those senators in America's government, and I'm harping on America because they are the world's most powerful country, and so none of them understood the internet. Nobody really understood how the internet worked, and we all laughed as individuals, right? At how these political leaders of their society, of the world's most powerful country, doesn't even understand how the internet really works, right? Like, do you really want people who don't understand this foundational technology to be the leaders of your society, of our world? I would argue no. I want people who actually understand the things that power human civilization, the engine of human civilization, to be the leaders of human civilization, right? Anyway, so as a counter to competition driving innovation, I argue collaboration drives innovation. And we are also seeing that in the world of Web3. Like a lot of people who work in Web3 will say this is not a competition, but a co-opetition. And then finally, so I did not create this concept of the triple bottom line. You can also Google that. It lives within the world of social entrepreneurship or social innovation. So instead of the single bottom line of profit only, the triple bottom line is people, profit, and planet. So I would argue Web3 could give rise to something known as light UX as opposed to dark UX. And finally, to wrap this all up, I think, again, like Web2 is all about don't be evil, but Web3 is all about can't be evil. And that was coined by actually this company called Blockstack, which rebranded to just Stacks, and now they're trying to create like basically smart contracts and stuff for Bitcoin. So I think like we need to move away from. But however, okay, as much as I just preached Web3 as though I was some sort of like preacher on a mountaintop with all this good stuff, we're not there yet, right? We've seen a lot of bad things in Web3, pyramid schemes, shit coins, scam coins, yada, yada, yada. The list goes on, right? Rug pulls, right? And so our job, I think, as Web3 biddlers and designers and creators should be to fix the Web3 perception problem by also like fixing or creating better products and tools and services to prevent or mitigate those bad things that have already happened. But I think it's also like it's fine that they happen, because maybe it's not fine in the sense that like I wanted it to happen. It's more so like it is a natural progression of human innovation. Like, I mean, with the advent of the internet, the internet in its earlier days, I guess, wasn't used virtuously either, right? And there was a perception problem with the internet back then as well. There were people who said the internet as a whole would be a fad and would not catch on, right? But obviously, we're here because of the internet. You're all here in this chat and stuff. How to get poop token. Funny. Anyway, by the way, I'm sure that already existed. So that's my little presentation on what I think is the difference between Web 2 and Web 3, or at least what I think the difference should be. Presented in a perspective that I think has not been talked about a lot, especially in terms of this concept of the monopoly. So any questions, comments, or concerns about what I just said? If not, I will just move on to the next one. And really the main activity of this workshop. Really? Nothing? No gut reaction? I feel like I said a lot of controversial stuff. Maybe not a lot, but no, we're all Gucci here. No objections? Okay. Well, we'll give it another several seconds. Okay, all right. I think I should just move on. Okay, so finally, the Web3 Design Maturity Model for in-house team organization. So yeah, I gotta specify this is only for in-house. Like, no, I'm not going to be going into agencies. That whole world is. It's just not going to be practical to address that world. So this is only for in-house, and by in-house I mean like any organization that's building their own product as opposed to somebody else's product, right? As opposed to a client's product. Now, okay. So to run through the agenda that I had, I'm going to start by presenting this model. And then we're only going to spend a bit of time brainstorming on only one aspect of it. And then we'll try to do a dot vote and then discussion and then Q&A. But like I said, we might not even be able to get to points 3 through 5 this time around. Without further ado, I'm going to begin. So the design maturity model. I'm just going to focus on this row first. Is this model that I did not come up with. Envision, this design company, spelled INVISION, they came up with. And it's basically the levels of maturity within an organization that define its capacities/capabilities to do UX properly, to do product design properly. So what I mean by that is, as a recap, for those who may not have watched the video that I described, that I went into just defining product design, or who may need a recap, the design process could really be boiled down to 3 simple steps, right? We got exploration, followed by experimentation, followed by execution. So these 3 steps are not always, I mean, there's a lot of sub steps within these 3 steps, and they rinse, lather, repeat. Like, they rinse, lather, repeat. But there's a lot of sub steps within, and not all organizations follow all the sub steps properly or efficiently or fully. And that's why the maturity model exists. So the way that I was able to sum this up is because a vision has 5 levels. They go from producers to connectors to architects to scientists to visionaries. Right? That's how Envision summarizes these levels. I've actually boiled it down or simplified it to 3 levels. So you got low-level maturity to mid-level maturity to high-level maturity. But before that, I just want to quickly mention there are a sizable amount of companies that have 0-level maturity of UX. So I call it the Genesis level because, you know, us Web3 people, we love that concept of the Genesis block, the Genesis this, the Genesis that, right? So yeah, there's a lot of Web3 companies out there that don't have any UX. And that means, like, it's not just a means of them not having a designer, but a good way to put it is they have, and there's a bit of a spoiler, but I'm going to try not to spoil, developer-driven design. As in the developer's decisions end up becoming the design, and it's not questioned as much, if any, if at all. So we definitely don't want there to be that level of design maturity, but it does exist. I've unfortunately had to, well, when I joined I've joined companies where they've had 0 UX, and then so I've inherited a product that was designed by developers, and yeah, it really like reveals, it's very revealing when you see it as a designer's perspective. You get to really see that it's like, wow, this really had 0 thought, 0 design thinking put into it. And like, yeah, anyway, I'll move on. So the low level of design maturity, I call it an island. So what do I mean by that? I worked as in organizations where it had that kind of level of maturity before. And I call it the island level of maturity because essentially the designer is like an island in those organizations. They have to do everything by themselves. They have to come up with everything by themselves. And by everything, I mean all the tools and processes. And more often than not, because the designer behaves like an island, the designer doesn't really get to do all the things that the designer needs to do, hence why it's at a low level of maturity, because there's not a lot of, respect for the designer. In these organizations, it usually is very like, go, go, go. We got to ship quickly. We got to move quickly, build fast. What is it? Move fast, break things, that kind of culture. And it exists in both the Web 2, especially Web 2, but also Web 3 world, right? I mean, a lot of things, I think in Web 3 in the early days, and we're not in the early days anymore. I hate it when people say we're in the early days. I think we're no longer in the early days of Web 3. But in those truly early days of Web 3, when little to no design thinking was put into it, a lot of things broke, right? Or a lot of things just didn't work. And so they didn't stick. Anyway, and what I mean by a lot of things, I know I'm being pretty vague here, but I'm also trying to move because there's a lot of content. Is like essentially a lot of the exploration work and some of the experimentation work. So like in these low-level mature companies, they don't place an emphasis on doing exploratory work, so research and experimentation as in testing. There's a lot more emphasis on the latter parts of experimentation and execution, that which being clickable prototypes with some adjustments here and there, and then but all like internal, all the decision making is internal. Like internal stakeholders decide what the design should be, what the product should look like and behave like. it's not a lot of like external consultation vis-a-vis research and testing. And by testing, again, I mean external, like user testing. It's a lot of internal testing and like people sounding off their opinions, what it should look like and be, especially from like the top down perspective, right? Like the product managers, the CEO or whatever, like these people, they'll offer their opinions, and they'll justify it sometimes, right, by saying like, oh, but we interface with the end customer, the end user, so we know what they want. But a lot of the times, or some of the times, they do know what they want. And they are good judges of what the user needs are, but most of the times they're not good judges, or they might have their own biases that they sneak into what they think the user needs or wants. Sorry, I was just reading a comment. Not sure what you meant there, Blockchain Chad, but yeah, if you could clarify, I can address it. So yeah, at the low level, it's a lot of just designer pushing pixels, giving it to the developers, they build it, and the trust, also the level of trust for what the designer designs is, it varies, right? It can vary from like high level of trust, but most of the time it's actually low level of trust or low-ish level of trust, because these organizations, they treat the designer as just someone who will make it look good or make it look pretty. There's a common phrase that's become a bit of a meme now in the designer world, and it's just make it look pretty. And it's like the designer, when they hear that, the product designer, immediately it's a triggering phrase, because it's like, oh my gosh, you don't really understand. Design is not just about making it look pretty. It's not just about these visual flares that yeah, sure, at face value, it's attractive, but it might not be something that people want to use anyway. Like, let's just look at, I mean, yeah, I could bring up a lot of examples, but like, yeah, well, I'll bring up Robinhood as an example. Let's even forget the whole like dark, well, actually, no, we should focus on dark UX a bit there. So like their UI UX was actually really good. Mostly like from a UI perspective, they use a lot of animations. They use a lot of like these visual flares, right, to make it very attractive, very engaging. And the UX was also easy. Actually, yeah, now okay, I'm sorry. That was a bad example, because that's an example of like how even though they had great UI and UX, it still ended up being something that, like, I don't know if you checked, but the Robinhood stock is now very low. I gotta really move on. So, okay, mid-level maturity is the bridge. I consider them to be the bridge, because the product designer in this one behaves as a bridge between developers, business people, and the user. They're a bridge between the company and the user. They're a bridge within the company and, yeah, outside as well. And so this one is where, yeah, the designer has more respect. They get to do more. They get to apply more of their skill sets in all three areas of exploration to experimentation to execution. And then the high level is the engine. Design drives the business. Their decisions are considered paramount, if not like close to paramount. No one's really talking down at a designer. Not many people are questioning the design team. And yes, oh yeah, that's another thing that differs between these maturity levels is at the low level, yeah, it's like just one designer. Mid-level, you can maybe have like a handful, from like half a dozen to maybe a dozen. High level, though, you get like a big ass design team that could be as big as maybe 50 to 100 designer. That's an exaggeration. Actually, maybe there's no organization that has 100, maybe 80, close to 100, maybe. Anyway, yeah, so design becomes an engine. And those are rare. Like Envision has documented how only about 5% or 4% of companies are visionaries, and then like only about 12% are scientists. So like collectively speaking, there's only about 20% of companies out there that are at a high level. Most companies are either low level or mid level. Actually, I mean, yeah. So with all that said, I'm gonna go down here briefly. So as you recall, exploration, experimentation, and execution is what I wrote up there. But I've created acronyms because, so this is a legend to help us be able to go into, sorry, so here's the x-axis, right? But I've also come up with a y-axis, because this discussion is not just about the design maturity model. We're going to go into what I call the Web3 design maturity model, right? And so when we add Web3 to the mix, well, there's now a y-axis to consider. And so that's why I had to create a legend. And before I go into the y-axis, I'm just going to also, I should have done this earlier. I'm sorry, I forgot. But the legend goes into defining what happens in each of these steps. So in exploration work, you could have like also levels, right? So you could have like level 1 exploration work would just be tertiary research, which is just like reading reports or following known design principles. A level 2 of exploration is tertiary and secondary research. Level 3 is tertiary, secondary, and primary research. Experimentation, you could have maybe none or some guerrilla user testing. So guerrilla user testing is like you go to a coffee shop, especially if you're working at a consumer-facing app, that you can do guerrilla research easily or testing easily. But if, oh, yes, okay, so sorry. I've just been told by my moderator that I need to move quickly. Well, the thing is, actually, this is going to be the bulk of the workshop, and I actually think we're moving at a good pace here. So I'm just gonna continue on. With experimentation, you can have at a level 1 of the XPM, it could be none versus guerrilla. Level 2 is internal. Level 3 is internal and external. So internal user testing versus internal plus external user testing. And then at an execution level, at the execution stage of the design process, this is all about data. So where does the designer get their data to make their design decisions? Well, at a level 1, it could be just data informed. They know what data exists out there based on what they know of the sociology of the user, for example. But or that they're just being told from a top-down perspective, like the CEO might just one day like say at a weekly town hall or monthly or whatever, our data tells us that we need to move in this direction. So you're informed of what the data is, but at a high level, but you're not really being given exact data points. Level 2 of execution is data driven. Your organization is able to, the designer actually has data coming in. They have a dashboard where they can look at user data and they know what to do. And then number 3 is data driver. I would say this is rare, but if you're at a company where you end up becoming an organization where the data you're gathering about your users is so good to a point where you end up actually maybe even be able to predict data about your users, and thus become a driver of within your industry. Your data becomes something that other companies look towards for their design decisions. So with that said, I can finally go into the y-axis. So within the y-axis, I've come up with another low level, mid level, and high level. This one is in terms of decentralization and autonomy. But currently, most Web3 organizations, I think the majority, are operating at a low level of decentralization and autonomy because it's realistic. It makes sense. And a minority are operating at a mid level of decentralization and autonomy. And then at a high level, it's idealistic for now. So within these, we have to keep 2 concepts in mind. There's mindset and activities. What's the mindset of these organizations, and what are the objectives and outcomes? What do they care about? And then activities are what are the tool set and skill set. So hard skills and soft skills, or tools and processes that they're using within these organizations. All right. So Gonna move on. At a low level of design maturity and at a low level of, or at all levels, the mindset is they care mostly about the visual. Oh yeah, okay, sorry. One final thing I need to talk about is this concept, the levels of Web3 user experience. So this is gonna help us answer the question of the mindset of these organizations. There's 4 layers. I did not come up with this. A designer friend of mine in the Web3 space came up with this. I could provide his link later. I forgot his name at the top of my head right now, but anyway, or you could just Google levels of Web3 user experience. He wrote a Medium article about it. These are the 4 layers. There's the visual layer, functional layer, access layer, and technology layer. And yeah, it's pretty straightforward. But actually, maybe not that straightforward. So okay, very quickly, we understand what the visual layer is. The technology layer is the lowest layer. So that's like the whole blockchain, the blockchain as a whole. So if you can change how Ethereum, so for example, the merge, right? Everyone's talking about the merge recently, and the subsequent stages that eventually make Ethereum more energy efficient, more decentralized, or whatever, or more of a proof of stake, right? Well, a lot of people are talking about how that merge might have enabled a faster blockchain or a cheaper blockchain, and so that's the technology layer. And a lot of people, when they talk about Web3 needs better UX, they're actually talking about it at a technology layer or at an access layer. So like so access layer being the products that exist around your Web3 product. Like when let's say you're building a dApp, all right? Like the dApp itself most likely won't have its own wallet. There is a wallet out there like MetaMask, right? So at the access layer, that's all about we need better UX for wallets or what have you. So sorry, I'm just trying to think here. Am I really running? No, I think I'm making good time here. I did say that this could be a 2-parter or like there could be an extension to this. Anyway, okay, so access layer is all the stuff that surrounds the dApp you're building. And then functional layer is the dApp that you're building, and as well as the visual layer. So yeah, with all that said, I'll try to be as fast as possible. At the low level of design maturity and at all levels of decentralization and autonomy, the mindset is visual. So it doesn't matter how decentralized or autonomous you are, if you're at a low level of design maturity, you only care about the visual, or you mostly care about the visual, somewhat functional layers of the Web3 UX. And then the kinds of activities that could happen is, so again, activities being tools and processes is, I classify these as Web2 activities, Web 2 and 3, and Web 3 activities. So for example, if you're at a low level of decentralization and autonomy, your activities for exploration, experimentation, and execution will be at a level 1, and you'll primarily be using Web 2 tools and processes. But at a mid-level of decentralization and autonomy, you'll be using maybe a mix of Web 2 and Web 3 tools and processes. And then finally, if you're at a high level of decentralization and autonomy, you'll be only using Web 3 activities. But your level of exploration, experimentation, and execution is still going to be level 1 because, again, you're at a low level of design maturity. So as we move on, you will see I've placed 2, 2, 2, 2, 2 all around here, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3 all around here. So as you evolve in the design maturity, your level of exploration, experimentation, and execution goes from 1 to 3. And then your mindset goes from a focus of only visual to visual plus functional to visual plus functional plus access plus maybe technology. So as in maybe you're working for an organization that is like closely tied to the Ethereum Foundation, for example, and your design decisions there or your decisions there could somehow also affect the Ethereum blockchain as a whole. So then you also have some influence in the at the technology layer, right? Maybe one day MetaMask becomes embedded into the Ethereum ecosystem to the point where it becomes like some kind of like pivotal, like inalienable part of the Ethereum network. Like you can't use Ethereum without using MetaMask, let's just assume. Like then MetaMask, any kind of decisions made there maybe could affect even how Ethereum evolves and the other way around. And so like that's where you could have maybe some kind of technological layer influence. Anyway, so with all that said, which is a lot, I know. You may have noticed this is the only block that I've made rounded. And that's because that's going to be the focus of our brainstorming activity. We're only brainstorming one aspect. That is, let's imagine that we were to create an organization, a Web3 organization, that it has a high level of design maturity and has a high level of decentralization and autonomy. What kinds of Web3 activities could occur there? So what kinds of tools and processes could occur in within this kind of organization that allows for a level 3 of exploration, experimentation, and execution? So that's the brainstorming activity. I did already personally come up with several of those activities myself, but I mean, the whole point of a workshop is to be interactive. So I wanted to know if anyone had any ideas themselves. I'm just going to quickly ask, would anybody want me to share one or two first of mine before we did like a group sharing, or would you not want me to spoil you anything? I gotta say, I'm surprised I didn't get many other comments as I was presenting all these things. I hope it wasn't because I said anything that was bad or wrong or or just whatever. Hackathons? I would say hackathons could be considered a process, yeah, but I wouldn't argue that hackathons is going to allow for a high level of design maturity. Because here's one thing also that I think a lot of people don't realize about design is not something that can move as fast as development. Design actually needs to be a slow-ish moving process, like at the very least ish. Like product designers, I mean, as I've said here, like really before pen gets to paper or cursor gets to digital canvas, or cursor gets to artboard, that's the experimentation step. The exploration step doesn't even have a lot of like visual design. So like, yeah, product design is not as fast of a process as one might think, and therefore hackathons isn't always necessarily a good fit with the world of design thinking and all that jazz, unless if the hackathon's like a week-long or maybe month-long event. Okay, so then you wrote open source. Well, yeah, open source is again, I wouldn't. That could be considered an activity. If we're talking about the use of open source tools, and if we're talking about the concept of open design. So has anyone heard of that? Like designing in the open. So there are designers out there or companies out there experimenting with that concept of just like people posting what they're designing on social media to gather opinions. Yeah, I mean, that could be classified as an activity. Yeah. I'll give you that. I'll put that down. And if nobody else wants to share, because I've only got Blockchain Chad here talking. Come on, I want to hear from some others here, especially if there are already designers in the audience. I don't know if there are any, but come on, is everyone here? What's the opposite of a chat again? I don't even know what the opposite of a shenanigan is again. Do we have any blockchain Stacy's here? Goodness. All right. Well, if nobody else wants to share, I'll just write that down, and then you. Oh, actually, before I write it down, I'm gonna summarize some of the stuff that I wrote here. Okay. So, I tried to summarize each level of decentralization and autonomy, at all levels of maturity. So I wrote like, if whenever exploration and experimentation work is done, the community is being tapped into for research and testing purposes and compensated maybe in fiat and crypto. And then the if/whenever execution work is done, the community is being tapped into for usage analytics purposes with Web2 tools. But if you're at a level 2 of decentralization and autonomy, instead of maybe using Web2 tools for data analytics, and instead of maybe just compensating in fiat and crypto, when you do research and testing. Ooh, verifying credentials. I like that. Okay. Yeah. I'm gonna actually I'll write both of those down. Okay. Yeah. So if you're at a level 2 of design maturity, of decentralization and autonomy maturity, I gotta come up with like a shorter way of saying that. You know what? I'll just say DAO maturity. Yeah, let's say that. Okay, if you're at a mid-level of DAO maturity, then whenever exploration and experimentation work is done, the community member has maybe a designated NFT membership badge role as a research participant, where their participation, both in terms of being interviewed and tested on, for example, is recorded/logged off-chain or on-chain, preferably the latter, and therefore can count towards an airdrop, for example. And then if whenever execution work is done, oh yeah, I said that, the community maybe the data analytics is a mix of Web2 and Web3 tooling. And then finally, if you're at a high level of DAO and design maturity, here's what I propose. The community member maybe has a designated NFT membership/role as a research participant, where their participation, both in terms of being interviewed and tested on, for example, is recorded/logged on-chain. And there's a system in place whereby said community member can earn their way towards greater ownership of the organization as a whole, i.e. a job, token equity, getting to contribute to more detailed decision-making. Maybe there's some sort of voting process for new features that these members can have a say in. And then if/whenever execution work is done, the community is being tapped into for usage analytics purposes with Web3 tooling, as well as feedback loops in place, whereby I, as a product designer, can get product analytics in more of a real-time and on-chain fashion, because everything from the design to the code itself is tokenized. This level is also where we've solved the problem of customer success in a Web3 way. So overall, what do I mean by that? Like, this is something that, I think I thought about when I first got into Web3 was like, okay, Web2, one of the benefits is you have a customer service representative, right? Or customer success representative who is on the other line. Maybe the product is using Intercom, and which is a Web2 tool, by the way, right? It's a SaaS product. And then on the other side, there's some customer service representative or customer success representative who's there to answer questions and whatnot. But that's a very Web2 way of doing things. And okay, and you might be wondering, well, what's the harm in having that? Well, let's look at Facebook. I know Facebook is one of the examples that a lot of people, I guess, love to use almost as much as like designers love to use Apple as their default example of great design. But I think it is a good example in this case because, and it can translate to a whole bunch of, or to the internet as a whole. I'll just get to the example. So you may have heard of this. Facebook already has this problem of moderation, content moderation, whereby a lot of the content moderators have to sift through some very, very dark content out there, and it has affected their mental health in a very bad way. And so if you can think of customer success representatives as also content moderators too, right? They're moderating, they're the go-between when it comes to the content that's coming in and the higher ups of the company. So they're in a way content moderators, even though they're being called or labeled as customer success representatives. So I think, and then also it's just like they are the ones that get to see this data, but like and then sure, like there's a data policy, there's a privacy policy, but I mean, we've seen the problems with Web2, whereby like some of these data policies, there could be backdoors, or there could be like third parties that are involved where like the data ends up leaking to or whatever, like with Facebook and Cambridge Analytica as an example. So obviously that might not happen with Intercom and well, see, but then again, that could, who knows? Anyway, my whole point is we're imagining an idealistic vision of a high level of maturity when it comes to DAO and design for how things are executed. So, okay, overall, when it comes to tools / skill sets, the community uses full-on Web3 tooling for everything that is conducted and has fully fleshed out pathways towards collective ownership for each and every member. That's the ideal. That's the vision. Okay, so okay, yeah, you wrote voting. Thanks for this. I learned a lot, but I have to go. Oh no. Okay, yeah, there is going to inevitably be a part 2. And as you can see, at a high level, I have a number of tools I came up with and processes, and therefore even maybe a couple new products, ideas that I come up with. I don't think I'll actually be able to go through all of this today. If anything, let's actually save this for part 2, but I'm just going to dive into one example of a tool and process. So actually, yeah, so one spicy one that I came up with is, what if we could capture users' emotions on chain via the signature, smart contracts, signaturing, or whatever? And like, I don't know, like this is just, it just came to me one day. I didn't really like put much detailed thought into what how this could play out, but maybe like, you know, whenever in a tool, product you're using, sometimes they might ask you, how are you feeling about this experience? And there's like emojis, right? What if you vote on an emoji and that gets captured into okay. All right, Keisha. I guess, yeah, then we only get one. Y'all only get this one idea that I've shared about capturing users' emotions on chain. And there you have it. We'll save the rest for next time. Yeah. Thank you, Keisha. Thank you, everyone, for all your input and for being here. Yeah.
Thank you so much. That was super informative, Spider. I mean, that was really amazing. I don't know whether people were taking notes, but I was just like typing away over here and taking as much notes as possible. There was so much to grasp. But the best part about this is it is on YouTube, it is on LinkedIn, it is recorded, so people can always refer back. And you can, pause the videos and take your notes. And there's going to be, I think, multiple parts to this, because this is definitely not something that we can cover in even a couple of hours. But what is your gut feel of all of this, Tien? Like, how do you feel with your first WinWeb3 workshop?
I feel great. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for organizing and moderating and just, yeah, your thoughts about your feedback that you just gave. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this was like enlightening for me, as I told you. Like, I'm not very well versed with what's happening in terms of Web3 product design. So much information. I'm going to rewatch this video multiple times and get so much alpha from here. But I'm also back up here on the screen to remind people to drop us your ETH addresses so we can drop your POAPs. That is really important, because you've got this amazing POAP badge that we have done for you. And this is the site address to go to. So you got a custom URL right here below, bit.ly/WinWeb3 POAP. That's bit.ly/WinWeb3 POAP. I'm going to let that hang on the screen for the next 30 seconds so that you can go in there and you would see a form, a Google form. We've already gotten a couple of responses so far. So you just got to fill up your email address, drop your ETH address and your Twitter handle, and we'll get the POAP dropped to your wallet. Yeah, and that's it for me. So what are we going to look forward to in the next session? If you could give us some,
Sure. Yay! Thank you, Blockchain Chad. Okay, So next time we'll just finish coming up, doing that exercise of brainstorming, or at least, I mean, I'm hoping, y'all can come with some ideas of tools and processes for what that high level of design and DAO maturity, that final, block could be. And that might end up being the whole session. If not, I would love there to be actually just also maybe a little bit more of a discussion on that, like whole difference between Web2 and Web3 stuff that I talked about. And then once we wrap this entire subject matter up, like there'll be another whole workshop about other things. Like we can then get into more details of like, UX and UI stuff, but like I'm thinking that is how this will go.
Yeah. Amazing. And you can always pop into our Discord channel and you can speak to Tian over there, Spider Tian, on Discord, HyperverseDAO Discord on the general channel. And you can keep asking him questions. And I guess that's the best way to reach you, right?
Yeah. Oh, Discord? Well, no, they could reach out to me, in Discord or Twitter or...
Or do you want to drop your home address so that people in Canada Toronto can come knock on your door?
Yeah.
Is it advisable?
My home address. Yeah, you know what? I mean, I've got a lot of security, so I don't mind. Even my phone number, I don't mind. Hey, look.
Yeah.
I'm open sourcing myself. All right. I'm open
That was amazing. Thank you so much, Tian. It was lovely meeting you, and lovely courtesy as well. So till the next time we see you guys, hope you guys join us for yet another session. Blockchain Chat wants to know what's for dinner. So I think come on to Discord and you can ask Tian yourself. But it's me, Crypto Dragoness, signing off from here, and see you guys next time. Bye.
Yes. See you all next time.